this number three? I don't even know
This is number
where we're
three.
at.
This is number three. Yeah. This is number three. We're having a good time.
My mind is in different places. Today, my daughter back in school, and summer is gone. Where did the time go?
I just came back from I just came back from Florida, and I couldn't believe they already started school down there. And
Oh wow.
I forgot because the heat down there is tremendous. So they start school early to get out. To try to. I think they get out in May, before the blistering heat starts down there. Was surprised. I was like, wow, no wonder why there's not a lot of kids running around. They were like, oh, they're all back in school. I was like, holy Christ.
Yeah, but to the kids, it doesn't matter. 180
Nope.
days is 180 days, whether you get out in May or June. Um, Shout out to all the kids for uh, hanging in there. But yeah, I still have my daughter doing the online school. Los Angeles Unified School District is huge, and so they got her in. It's called City of Angels. Online schooling, and the teachers they're doing the best they can. Um, just the way it's all pieced together, it's not streamlined. It's okay, if you want to find this, scroll down to here, click on here. Once you get to that page, and you go to the left side of the screen, look for this, click on there. Then I'll bring you to this window. Once you get to this window, then you click on this button here, and then you'll get to where you need to be. It's like, huh? And you expect 7-year olds? I mean, they could work magic, but you expect them to remember all this stuff? Got to go one place to access your email, one place for your homework, one place for the lesson. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I'm full of questions.
I'm just
Well, yeah.
hugging my daughter like it's okay. I'm sorry, Daddy's sorry.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would be doing the same thing. Like I said, I'm full of questions, and looking forward to diving into some of them, because I think that, as you sort of alluded to, that is where we're gonna take the discussion tonight. We're gonna take you guys on a journey with us here into education. I don't think that education is talked about enough. I don't think it's talked about enough in the right light. I don't think that contextually people really grasp what the education system is like here in this country. We can probably do another episode, comparing and contrasting the differences between the United States and other countries. I've certainly done my homework and looked at other
Mhm.
countries, and there are stark differences between the way we educate our children here today and other countries. So, um, that'll be another episode for us to get into that kind of will piggyback off of this one. But the main the main topic here is the state of education here in the United States, and we're looking forward to sharing our experiences. I think both personally, as we we're both products of the public school system. Our children are products of this system right now, and we talk a lot outside of the podcast here about education and what we're doing with our daughters, and we have some. I don't know if they're controversial. They may be in the court of public opinion, in terms of education, but it's just because of what everybody else
Yeah.
is taught to think and how to think about education. Hopefully, this will open your eyes and ears a little bit, and maybe give you a voice, give you a little bit of hope, to go open your mouth and say something about the way your child or children are getting educated.
Yeah, I agree because as parents, you want the what's best for your child, hopefully. So I think education is something where you shouldn't have your mouth closed. And we do this with doctors, we do this with teachers, we do this with everybody who has a degree. And we say, oh, they have a degree in this, so they know what's best. No, they don't. They don't know what's best for your child. You do. You're there every single day. Each child is different. What how they react to certain lessons, how they respond to certain teachers, certain environments. You know that if you are present in your child's life, and no teacher can tell you this is what's best for your child. They can give you guidelines and and guidance, like, hey, I feel this is what would work best for your child. But to have this one size fits all thing and it's just one way, I think parents should and need to use their voice to
They do.
get the needle moving,
They do.
so to speak.
Well, let's kind of seg right into it. I think the first thing that I kind of want to talk about is public school. You mentioned, the mentioned, LA's public school system, the LA Los Angeles Unified School District. For me, I'm just kind of curious about how, and then I can kind of talk about my experience with regard to remote learning and the kids that I was sort of the stepdad to at the time, how they went through remote learning. Has it changed significantly from when COVID was in full flare to now? And then again, like I said, I'll kind of talk a little bit about what I experienced when the kids were in school during COVID or remote hybrid, whatever you want to call it. I'm just kind of curious what that experience is like right now for your daughter specifically.
um it's been a little change since the COVID pandemic and all that, when she moved to homeschooling or online learning. um it hasn't changed drastically. I think they got it down a little more as far as, okay, this is what's working with the lessons and all of this, but it's still missing this cohesiveness because it still feels just jumbled and put together. As I explained at the top of the episode, it's you gotta go to many different screens, go through many different sites and all that, just to get to one thing that the teacher wants you to get to. And it should all be in a streamlined, easier place. I'm sure, yes, I understand, like, during the pandemic, when it first happened, it's like we got to throw something together, and things wasn't, you still have to
Sure,
build something. But now, 2022 going into 2023, you had enough time to really look
sure,
at everything and to, like, get everything
sure,
working. um and it just, like I said, I feel bad for the kids in the sense it's just not really
sure,
thought through. It's like, all right, these kids want to be online and they
sure,
don't want to be in the classroom. Okay, we're just
sure,
gonna give them this, just what's
sure,
left over. And that's how I feel. And I could be totally off base,
sure,
but that's how it seems.
sure. Yeah.
Um we had our, our daughter's last teacher, which is first grade. The first day of school, and he was talking to the students and the parents. He was like, "Oh, I'm here. I'm not your main teacher. I don't know if I'm going to be here all year."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, And then 1 month goes by, he's still there. 2 months go by, he's still there, and so on. And then he ended up being the teacher for the whole school year. But it's those things that even the teachers don't know. Hey, I don't know where I'm supposed to be, or they don't understand the workings of Zoom, because it's through Zoom, a Zoom link. And my last thing, and then I'll bring, push it over to you, Dave. Um, Before school today, we're about to get on, so they give us the Zoom meeting ID, the password, all that stuff. So I'm putting it in. Boom, go to connect. Oh, Zoom, your version of Zoom is out of date. It needs to be updated. I'm like, okay. So then, and she has a school iPad that they gave her during the pandemic. So I'm looking and looking, and there's no app store to update it. So I'm like, okay, let me go through the actual, uh, go through Google, type in Zoom on the, the browser. Same thing. I'm like, all right. And now she's like 5 minutes late. And then I'm like searching on the iPad, and then finally I see apps. There's like um, a folder that says apps, and it just has all these school apps. And then one of them was Zoom. And then all it has on there is install. It doesn't have update or anything. So I hit install, and then it installs, and then I click on
Wow.
it, and then it ends up working. I'm like, shouldn't this
Yep.
update automatically or
Yeah.
so?
The
It's
clunkiness.
little things like that, the clunkiness of the whole thing that makes it not enjoyable. And I appreciate what they're trying to do, for those who don't want their children in a classroom right now. I appreciate that. Don't get me wrong, but I think a little more time and effort could be put
Yeah.
into this to make it a
Yeah.
little more,
Yeah.
a little easier,
Yeah.
and a little more
Yeah. I
streamlined for
think
everyone.
I'm gonna kind of respond with a two-pronged look at this. So I am a remote executive, a remote advocate, somebody who's worked in the remote space for the last, I'm going on 12 years now, completely remote, fully remote for my professional life, career. And I can tell you that it is very, very difficult to manage an manage an organization of any size on a remote basis. A couple of people, sure. Once you start getting into, double digits, triple digits, four digits of people, very, very, very difficult to manage cohesiveness. And there would be some people out there that'll
Hmm.
disagree with me, but I've not seen it yet in a remote environment from a business perspective. So I can only imagine Los Angeles, unified school district. How many kids are remote? Hundreds of thousands, tons, tons. So, so to think that they could do this cohesively is probably, like, in a very, very short time, short amount of time, is probably ridiculous. So definitely props to them for doing what they were able to do. That being said, though, I do think having years under their belt now, like you too, they should have come up with a much better system. It is possible. I know that there are solutions out there that exist. I've employed some of them in my professional career to, you know, create
Hmm.
cohesiveness amongst large groups of people working together. So I know how to get it done. And I'm assuming there are people out there that are probably a lot smarter than me that work in education that could do it. I just think it comes down to time and money. That's the big issue with regard to public education. It's all time and money. Oh, do we really need to invest this much money? And on the public facing campaigns that the public school systems put out there, it's like, oh well, we're going to do whatever we need to do for the children. And the reality is that's not true, because unfortunately, education on a public scale is very, very, very expensive. If you look at the totality of it, it's very expensive. And there are other aspects that we can talk about from a financial perspective about it. But again, that's another subtopic here regarding public education.
Yeah.
The other, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say they found money to give every kid an iPad.
Oh yeah, I mean,
You know, it's
listen. The money's there. The money's there. It's just where
yeah.
the money gets allocated, how it gets allocated, who's going to spend it. So
Mhm.
same thing with my ex's kids when they were in public school, and this is my other sort of response to the remote aspect of education. So my ex had three other kids that lived with us, and I lived in a very, very small town. I'll give you guys a quick little anecdote here. Lived in a relatively small town in Connecticut. It was actually called a hamlet. So go look that up for those of you guys that don't know what a hamlet is. It'll put into perspective how small of the town I lived in was in Connecticut. I think the total population of the town I lived in was about 1,500 people, 2,000 people, maybe at max. So very, very small town in a very, very tightly knit school system. Actually, one of the top rated school districts in all of Connecticut that I lived in this small little town, um, because of the people that lived there, the amount of wealth that was within this small little community. Um, the experience for the kids was actually really good. They were able to put to again, and because we're not talking about scale at the scale of Los Angeles school district or like a Chicago or New York, this small little school district was able to blow it out of the park, right? Because they only have a finite number of children that they're taking care of. They were able to put a ton of effort into building out this system, and it was not clunky at all. Like they utilized Zoom. They also integrated cameras into the classrooms so that the kids could see the teachers actually in the classroom teaching to make them feel like they were in the classroom. And then when COVID started to subside and they were doing hybrid schedule, some of the kids stayed at home and some of the kids went in the classroom. The kids could see one another in the classroom and at home. It was pretty cool. Like you could see half your classmates in class sitting at the desks and the teacher. And again, I think it was a pretty cool experience for my ex's kids. And
Hmm.
I think they did a really, really good job. There were no major issues that I saw. They all handed out not iPads, but they handed out Chromebooks to all the kids in the school district, and it worked pretty well. I never heard anything about apps being clunky. They actually used a Google workspace. Google has an entire educational suite that they used, and everything was done through Google. So they paid probably a significant amount of money to utilize Google, and everything was all self-contained within Google. The lessons, the work, they didn't have to go anywhere. They opened up their Chromebook, opened up their browser, and went into Google, logged in, and everything was right there, except for Zoom, obviously. So I think again, yeah, a vastly different experience than the LA school district and some of these other major metropolitan public school districts. Um, and again, I think the issue is just that the sheer size of the districts makes a huge, huge difference, right? Serving kids in your district, or your school um, population versus, the smaller one that I came from. There are clear differences for sure, stark differences in the level of service that are being provided. Nonetheless, they're still providing education and doing what they can do with the resources that they have. But I'm always of the mindset that you can always do more for kids. That's just my mentality. So, with that being said, my other sort of question around, I guess, just the the education system in general right now. Um, in your experience, how different is LA from from Rhode Island public school? I'm assuming vastly different from your experience versus what your daughter's going through now.
Uh, yeah, huge, huge difference, and I don't know if it's just because it's the West Coast, but yeah, it's vastly different. Particularly the curriculum, I guess. Certain things that are added, and obviously, I was joking around with the iPad things, but one of the major differences is where teachers used books and different means to teach us when I was my daughter's age. Now it's YouTube.
Yeah.
They sit everybody down and then they pull up a video on YouTube. Hey kids, we're gonna learn about the numbers. Here's how we add by 10. And we were talking about this earlier. You do this, you do that. So it was a small little YouTube video, and then the video ends and the teacher will interject, like, hey, okay, kids. So that's how you add by 10 and blah blah blah. So here's your lesson. And then they give them the lesson to do it. So that's a big one big difference that I noticed is, and this may be a controversial take as well. are we really teaching if we're just showing a child videos all day,
Yeah,
or
probably not.
or just you're just like press and play. And we'll talk about this a little later, where another hot topic is teacher salaries. Yeah, are they underpaid? But that plays into that. Like, is it really learning for the child if they're just sitting there? The teacher's just pressing play on something. It's basically you're just babysitting. Coming from Rhode Island, it's obviously the school districts are not nearly as big as LA, and just the sheer numbers of kids in the classroom, and that I feel bad for some of the teachers, where it's for one teacher, you have all these students in the class. So there's there's things where I'm like, I feel for the teacher, and something should be done about that, class sizes. But then there's certain things where you have this extra technology to do a little bit more, but we're using it just as, hey, I'm gonna substitute this for actually going in the trenches and teaching the students on
Yeah,
each
yeah,
one individually. You show this
yeah,
video, okay, kids, and then some may get it, a lot of them may not on the video. So
yep,
there's a lot. That's the one major thing that comes to mind. And I don't want to go too much into it, because then we'll be talking for hours.
yeah, yeah,
um but and I want to throw this back to you. But I was looking at the best high schools, and they said something here about Connecticut, and this is for 2022. Nearly 48% of its eligible schools are in the top quarter of the national rankings. From
yep,
Massachusetts, nearly
yep,
48% in the top 25%, and then
yep,
followed by Connecticut with
yep,
42.5% of their high schools
yeah,
that are eligible in the top quarter. That's significant in those two regions, and they're both East Coast. And I can attest to this,
yeah.
that I don't know what education you guys on the West Coast or California are getting, because a lot of y'all, when I say, what it comes up, well, where are you from? Oh, I am from Rhode Island. And you guys are like, oh, oh, that's in New York. I can't, I just can't believe that. So it kind of makes sense when you get answers like that, or people are like, oh, Rhode Island, it's an island. I'm like, really? So I want you to take it a little further about the education there, specifically surrounding Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I think that Connecticut and Massachusetts, and, you could group Rhode Island into the mix. There's a lot of again, this isn't to take away from the money that exists out there in other states and places, but there is a lot of wealth in Connecticut. There's a lot of wealth in Massachusetts. Rhode Island, not so much anymore. It lingers, right? Rhode Island used to be the place where all these really wealthy families used to have all their mansions and summer homes, right? They still exist today in Newport, right? There's a reason why the wealthy families back in the day, the Rockefellers, the you know all the magnates back in the day have houses or have property in Newport in some way, shape, or form, or did. The concentration of wealth up here is just such that I don't know. I think it just lends itself to education, potentially smarter kids. And I'm not trying to say that kids that don't come from wealth aren't smart. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that when you have wealth, I think that it affords you opportunities that you wouldn't get otherwise. And I think that a lot of money, at least up here in the Northeast, goes into education. There are tons of private schools, and I know that I don't think that I don't know if all those rankings are regarding public schools or they're a mixture, but I think it is actually. I did take a look at it. It said public high schools. Even the public high schools, listen, they get funding up here in the
Mm,
Northeast for whatever
yeah,
reason. We believe in education, right? If you look at the concentration of Ivy League schools, where are they? They're all on the East Coast. They're all up here in the North.
yeah, that's true.
Harvard, Cornell, University of Pennsylvania, Yale. They're all here. They're in Mass, Rhode Island. I'm sorry, Mass, Rhode Island, Connecticut. Yeah, you got Brown University in Rhode Island. All the Ivy Leagues are up here. So I can only assume that our graduation rates are what they are because education is pushed so much up here. And again, I'm not saying that it's not pushed any harder anywhere else, but I just think that this is kind of where it all started. I mean, the original 13 colonies emanated here. This is where they are in the Northeast. I mean, so I would only imagine that we built the first set of colleges, the first, set of educational principles and foundations that everybody else has taken from, including the Midwest, the West Coast. I mean, it all came from here. It all started from one place.
Yeah,
And that's just kind of why I think it's the way it is. I mean, it should be. I would just think logically, if this is where it started, we set the tone. We should be in the top rankings. And again, there are problems. I'm not going to say there aren't
hmm
problems with public education. I think there are, but just again, just talking about your point about graduation, I think that's just kind of why it is what it is. So
yeah, and just another quick point. You talk about Ivy League schools and talk about high schools, but schools with, I guess, more funding versus those that are where the majority are, Black, Hispanic student bodies in certain areas where they may not get as much funding. And I don't want to beat this is like beating a dead horse with a stick, but there is something to be said about um, certain funding where they said in looking at student populations, about 31% of ranked schools have majority Black and Hispanic student bodies. So 31% of all the schools that were ranked the best high schools in 2022 um, have a majority Black and Hispanic student bodies, but just 25% of schools featured in the top quarter of overall rankings have similar demographics.
yeah, sure, listen. It makes sense. I just shared another graph with you about public school spending, right? Education spending statistics per student. So just really quickly, if you look at Rhode Island, Mass, Connecticut. So Connecticut spends on average $21,100 a year per student. Rhode Island spends about 18,000. Massachusetts spends about 20,000. If you look at New York, the state of New York, they spend about 25,000 a
Mm,
student. New Jersey, 21,000. So if you look at the entirety of the Northeast part of the United States, we spend the most money per student per year. That's just what it is.
yeah.
Look at California. California only spends 13,000. Florida only 10,000. Texas 9,000. Um a lot of the southern states don't spend that much money. The Midwest doesn't spend that much. Um
Yeah, just looking at this exactly, just the East Coast is spending the most.
yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no one else, not that I see in this.
Nowhere comes close.
Yeah,
I think maybe the state of Wyoming. If you look at Wyoming's under Montana, they spend 16.2 thousand in the Midwest. That they're about the highest, and then I think Chicago, they consider Chicago the Midwest as well, about 16,000. But beyond that, nowhere else comes close. Florida doesn't come close. Georgia, Texas. I thought Texas for sure would have spent a ton of money, but they don't even come close. The entirety of the Northeast is spending a ton of money per student. And like I said, I think that just speaks to why the East Coast is ranked the way it is. I think we possibly churn out, I don't know, just more educated children.
mm,
I just think that's what the statistics show. there are margins of error when you look at statistics. I get that, and I'm not saying that these are the end all be all numbers, but as a person just taking a look at this from a layperson perspective without getting into data science, I mean, I think you can draw some pretty simple conclusions from looking at this data. And that's just again my take on it. So I just thought I would share that really quickly. Kind
Yeah,
of just groups in our discussion about why education is the way it is from a public funding perspective.
let's bring this back to something I said earlier about the teacher salaries. Are they really underpaid? Um, and I think we can take from this just like any other profession. There are those who are extremely underpaid. There are those who are underpaid and who deserve a lot more. And hats off to teachers because a bunch of y'all deserve way more than what you're getting. You deserve to be treated a
Yep.
lot better than what you're treated. So that
Yep.
goes without
Yep.
saying. But
Yep.
there is that group that just go in there, sit down, and are babysitting, and
Yep.
they're getting what they deserve, and that's just the truth.
I,
Um,
yep.
Again, talking about just pressing play for a YouTube video. I could just do that. My child could
Yeah.
do that on their own. They don't need the teacher to sit down. Okay, kids, here I'm gonna play a video or a book. You have YouTube read the book to the kids. Why can't
Yeah. That's
you get the
ridiculous.
book and read it to them? You know,
Yeah.
like at the very least.
Yeah. 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 That's ridiculous. I think. Listen, I'll kind of just jump in. Yeah. I think that yes, there are some teachers that are exemplary and deserve more than they get. I can personally attest to some teachers that I know professionally. My neighbor across the street has been a public school teacher for the last 35 plus years, and the amount of money this woman invests in her students in her classroom is ridiculous. It's like she almost works for free with how much money she spends on her classroom and her students. And I saw that growing up because she taught in elementary school and middle school when I was in school. So I get to see her in action, and as an adult now, still seeing her teaching and still doing that. Like she definitely sticks out in my mind. And there are a bunch of teachers like her out there that do that. But I too agree that there are a bunch of teachers now, and even in the past when I went to school, that did not teach, that just read read passages from a book, did not really educate us, and kind of just left it in our hands. And that's part of the reason why I left high school early and graduated a year early, because I was just sick of the bullshit, and I realized, hey, I'm already teaching myself all this stuff. Like, let me go take a test and test out of here, and go to college and get on with my
Yeah.
life, because it was a waste of my time. And I can tell you now that I think it's the problem has only become exacerbated by the fact that there are a bunch of people coming into the teaching profession because they think, oh, it's just an easy paycheck, and I can just sit around and do nothing. And to me, that's a problem. If you're getting in that profession to teach, you should have a passion for it. You shouldn't just be getting in it to get an easy paycheck. And I understand that's the mentality of some people these days. They want to just paycheck to do the least amount of work possible. And for me, that's a big no no, because you're educating the next generation of people, or lack thereof. So you know you're setting our country up and our next generation up for failure if you're not actually teaching and providing them some value. So
Exactly.
um
And just what you said, it's just something clicked. Is even me growing up, I can remember the teachers that made an impact on me were the ones who taught outside of the curriculum, and they looked at the students, and they didn't just teach us math, science, social studies, and just the numbers, the just the indoctrination, just that stuff. They taught us other things, said things so that stuck with us, certain quotes, and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
used different analogies and experiences. Those are the ones who made an impact on me. It wasn't the ones
Sure.
that you graduate from college with this degree just to do this and then sit down and just like, okay, you need to pick a book to read and do a report on it. Like what? Like how
Yeah.
are we
Yeah.
learning anything? Just okay, pick a book, and then they
Yeah.
give you uh, a pool to choose from. A list of books that you have to read, and then you read it, and then they want you to do a report on it. How is
Yeah.
that learn? It's just I'm reading a book and writing about it.
Yeah. 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 It's again, it goes back to the methodology, the line of thinking around the teaching. I can speak about experience in terms of teachers that left an impact on me. Shout out to Mr. Colson, sixth grade guy. Actually got me into uh, HTML coding, got me into web development in sixth grade. This guy was an awesome teacher. He was a young teacher when I was in sixth grade. I don't know. He was probably in his early 30s. Him and his wife were both teachers. His wife was a seventh grade mathematics teacher, Mrs. Colson. I actually had her when I graduated. Shout out to her too. But Mr. Colson, Chris Colson was a good dude, man. He really he taught outside of the box, and he was a photographer in addition to being a sixth grade teacher. He taught us everything, obviously. At the sixth grade level, you have him all day long, aside from your gym and art class. He was the primary teacher for sixth graders. And like I said, he just left a long lasting impact on me because he was the first teacher that did not conform to the normative ways of education. He always wanted us to do things that were outside of the box. He would encourage us to use technology in sixth grade. Like I said, we're going back to 2001 now. If that gives you any context about how long ago I was in sixth grade. Um, and like I said, that guy got me into coding and building websites. And, obviously it stuck with me all these years, many, many, many years later, right? Like I said, we're talking 20 something years later that I still remember what this guy did for me and a bunch of other students too. I think he really touched a ton of kids that were in that class. And I don't know if he's still teaching now. I don't know if he's retired or did something else, but or doing something else. But I can tell you that man, he was one hell of a teacher, and yeah, I think he kind of helped shaped my outlook on education foundationally, even personally as a kid growing up. Like good dude. I still know the guy till this day. He lives not that far from us. Him and his wife, and we don't keep in touch as often as I would like,
Mhm.
but may actually reach out to him. Like I said, kind of brought up the podcast kind of brought him up, so I may reach out to him, see how he's doing, checking
Yeah,
in.
and you would call those teachers like they're almost I get like a rebel almost where
Yeah, yeah, he
yeah,
was.
they're doing things outside. It's like, nah, I don't want this. This isn't going to do you any good. But this here is something. Yeah,
Will.
this will. And
Yeah.
at the time, you don't understand it truly because I
No.
have to give a shout out
No.
to one of my English teacher, Mrs. Zippin, Hope High School, and her teaching and stuff like that. I never understood in those certain little. She was a Jewish woman, and a certain projects she would give us with writing and stuff like that. And she was the one who always taught me about the beginning. That impression when you start a story. How are you going to grab the listener or the reader? So it was usually the beginning, or you would write a beginning. So like, oh, I want you to write an opening paragraph. You would write that, you'd give it to her, and then she would read it, and then she would underline some things, and she'll be like, think about that, how you're saying that. Or sometimes she'll put some notes. What if you said something like this? So it was, like she really took every single kid in that class and what 20 children and would look at each one of their paragraphs of what they're writing and hand out notes, and it wasn't anything cookie cutter. It was personalized for you to make you better. And
Yep.
then the certain,
Yep.
she would talk about, even some religious things, which God forbid,
Yeah.
if you do that now, they're gonna hang you. You know, and kids, they didn't. Nobody in the class, like I don't know if there was any in there that didn't believe in God or anything. I'm sure there was some in there, but it was something we all sat and we listened to what she was saying, because she did it in a way where she was not being preachy or anything like that, but she added that as part of the curriculum to, I guess, get everyone thinking just thinking about certain other things and not just Christopher Columbus or reading The Great Gatsby or stories like that. It's other things she involved. So I got to give a huge, huge shout out to her because she was the first person that made me really understand like English and writing in the real world.
Yeah, and that's awesome. When teachers can provide that level of uh, personalized education. I think now it's I'm not saying it's shunned upon or forbidden, but it's like, oh God, you got to do that much more work. I think that's kind of where some of the new generation of teachers are like, oh, I don't have time to do this. I'm not going to personalize it for every kid. Then they blanket whatever feedback they want to provide to the entirety of the class, even though it may not apply to the entirety of the class. It's like, hey guys, make sure you do this and everybody do this because this is what I'm seeing. That sucks, and I would hate to be in that. I would hate to be in that position if I was a student
Yeah,
now because I too get that level of personalization when I was in
yep,
school for some of the classes that I was in,
exactly.
and you know, yeah, I think that's what sucks. I know in college you get it. All throughout my college career, I got personalization
Of
from somebody,
course.
whether it was a graduate student, working for the professor, answering some of the questions, and then kind of supervising their responses back to the students. I still got feedback directly related to whatever work it was that I was turning in, and I appreciate that. Even as in a professional setting, I prefer to get direct feedback from whoever it is I'm working with because that's the only way you can improve. And it's a
Mhm.
travesty to see that that's not happening in public school today. So it sucks.
Yeah.
And I think that yeah, I think the general consensus is that public school could be much better, and I think that I think that we need to do better um, as parents, as advocates for our kids in the public school system. Like, open your mouth, stop being lazy, and just say something. Like, that's the only way you affect any meaningful change. Go join the school committee, get on a PTO board, and raise hell because that's
Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm headed.
and that's what I was thinking. Real quick was for for this stuff to change. There's a reason why it's called the parent teacher conference. Teachers, you have to stop thinking that you know more than the parents.
Yep.
Period. Stop thinking you know more than the parents.
Yep.
Parents, you have to sometimes trust in your teachers and you know some of the feedback they give you for your child may need a little more guidance. If the teacher's telling you, don't get mad at the teacher. They tell, hey, your child, oh, not my child, they do this and stuff like that. So it's those two things. So parent teacher conference is that time where you guys all, or not just you guys, but we as a community all come together and we can make things happen. We can make some change. Yes, it sounds so, you know, like what is it, public access channel, one of those like people talking about certain things or whatever, it may sound a little, gushy or whatever, but that's where it starts. It starts with the parents and the teachers, and we get on that same wavelength, and we can make things happen. But if the teachers are in one area, parents are in one area, we're arguing about these little things, stuff like that. It's all gonna be. It's gonna be the same thing. And guess who are the ones that you know take the blunt of all of this? It's the children, and
Yep.
like they're the ones
Yep.
that suffer
Yep.
through all of
Yep.
this.
Yep. Couldn't have said it any better. I think that's kind of the genesis of the entirety of this podcast. Kind of just to just not air out our grievances, because I mean, God knows I have a laundry list of grievances around my daughter's current educational setup. But I think it's just high level of it's a high level discussion here with us just kind of
Yeah,
telling everybody, listen, we all need to come together, teachers, parents, administrators of the education system, and literally get everybody's head out of their ass and come together for the kids. Because if we don't, man, we're in trouble. We are in trouble.
for
So
real.
anything I can do now, I'm going to do to make sure my daughter is set. Um, and I'm assuming you're again on the same page with that, doing the
Dude,
same thing, anything and
mhm,
everything you can do.
absolutely. And to jump on one thing you said, and I'll let you end it because we've been going on for a minute, but I want you to end on this, Dave. I would give my opinion on this, but I'm so like, it just, I don't know whether to laugh or be pissed off, angry about, but the curriculum, we talk about modern teachers and the curriculum, they change all this stuff. And one thing that these woke teachers are trying to do or they're trying to implement, and they've started implementing it in certain school districts, is talking to prepubescent children about sex.
Yeah, big no
And
no.
okay, you take it. I'm done. Okay, so this is you, Dave.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll end it with this. I think I think I just kind of have two words for education systems trying to teach this, and those two words are stop it. Fucking stop it. If you want me to add a tertiary word into the mix, absolutely unnecessary to be teaching that. And anyone that disagrees, I'm gonna just say you're a fucking idiot. Whoever you are out there that's saying that they should be teaching that. Where in the hell does a school system get the right to be teaching, like you said, prepubescent children about procreation? It is unfucking necessary, and we wonder why we have all these problems in this country. I don't see them doing this in other parts of the world. I don't. And maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm blind, but I don't see it when I look anywhere else. Show me another country that has that in their curriculum, teaching first graders, second graders, this type of stuff. It's absolutely fucking disgusting as far as I'm
Yeah, and
concerned.
it's not just sex with another person. It's it's masturbation. It's everything around that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're teaching this,
Absolutely ridiculous.
or not even teaching. It's you're putting this on children. And like let
Yeah.
them be kids. I'm
Children.
sorry. I'm gonna get too. Man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. It's a very, 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 very sensitive topic. And man, like I said, I think a lot of if I had my way, I'd be putting people in jail over teaching this shit. Like, not for nothing, man. It is not necessary. It opens up Pandora's box that is not necessary at that age. At that age. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And all everybody's gonna hoot and holler and say, "Oh well, we need to make sure they're educated." No, you don't. You need to make sure they're educated in how to play with fucking Barbie dolls
Mhm.
and Transformer toys and that shit like that.
I'll say this:
That's what they should be focused on.
my daughter. when I pick her up from her mom, and I think you can attest to this too, Dave, and probably every other parent. I pick her up. She had school that day. Hey, Dad. At school we did this. So imagine,
Yep.
hey, Dad. At school, my teacher taught me that if I start touching myself, it's okay.
Yeah, dude. I would,
I
like I
stopped
said,
that car,
I
like,
would.
look back at her. What?
who,
I'd hug her. Like, I'm not mad at
who,
you.
nope. And then I'd be dropping her off real quick and going to the school and be like, "You told my daughter what? Okay, I'm going to be filing a DCF report and a complaint against you and everybody else in the school district, and I'm having my daughter removed from this system." And you guys can say we're overreacting.
Yeah,
I don't think
yeah,
so.
yeah. You can say that. I don't care. And this is where it goes back to our other point: teachers and parents coming together to agree on stuff like this.
Fundamental, fundamental child building. You don't interject that into
Let a
little
child
kids.
do child things. Let them be children. They
Yes,
don't
stop
need to
taking away
know
their
about that. Just
innocence.
let them be a kid. Yeah,
No.
let them be innocent.
Yep.
They're gonna grow
Yep.
up so fast, and they'll
And
be talking about this stuff eventually.
yep. Yep. Not now.
Just let a child be a child. Let them run around and do whatever it is the child things that they like. Stop putting
Exactly.
adult things on these children. And like, God, it's
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
irritating, annoying.
It's and it's like I said, I think it's unethical. It's just not morally it's not morally correct. And you guys can sit here and talk about us on our moral high horses, but at the end of the day, I think that we're not wrong.
No,
Unfortunately, we're not. You can disagree. We're not. I'm a staunch supporter of my moral beliefs around that. I think you are, and I think a lot
mhm.
of other people are as well. They're just afraid to open their mouth. I'm not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with that,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Let's in there before I tear up my studio right now, man.
exactly, exactly. With that being said, again, we hope you guys enjoyed. This was a little bit of a roller coaster ride here on education. But we're gonna end it on a high note here, though. Again, appreciate you guys listening, and we'll be back shortly with the next one.